Welcome to Earthworm Slumber Party,
where we're exploring big ideas playfully.
I am Nisha, and this is Cupcake. For those of you who are not watching this podcast on YouTube, I'm holding my stuffy that's kind of like a kitty, and it's white, and it has stars in its eyes, and it has wings and a unicorn, and it's really cute. So this is my stuffy Cupcake.
And my name is Opulence, and I am joined by a very elegant stuffed animal here named Moose Dice. And he's a little moose wearing a red pajama set. Quite stunning, I would say.
So stunning.
Yeah. Nisha, what are you composting today?
I think I am composting not leaning into my Leo rising identity.
You were resisting.
I think I was resisting. I think I was first of all, we're both Leo risings. Can you tell? We are Earth signs, but we are Leo risings. And for those of you who don't know, that means that, I think that this exemplifies it, this beautiful dress that Opulence has on and my crown. So we want you to see us.
We are really playing for the camera today, and we do have a YouTube channel where you can watch all these podcasts as videos. If you're just listening to us through your earbuds, I am wearing a very fabulous, fluffy, puffy, structured, I would say high fashion pink dress.
Very high fashion.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
I think I would say I inspired you to compost your resistance.
You did. We were actually just talking about it before we recorded the episode about how as Leo risings, it's so important for us to lean into that identity. You said it was the medicine, right?
Yes, I actually once had this fabulous tarot reader named Sensible Paul tell me that your rising sign is meant to be a medicine. So when you're at some point in your life where you don't know what to do, you're kind of down and out, you should look at your rising sign and think about that sign and the magic and medicine of that sign. So Cancer rising, your medicine is to care, lean into self-care, care for others. For Leos, it's to play, to express, to make art. So I'm so glad you're going to be tapping into that source of medicine and power, Nisha.
Me too. It's time to compost the passive Leo rising. I think I was more of a passive Leo rising and be a little more active in this playful display.
Step into your lion nature.
It's time.
Love that.
Roar.
I am composting. I think I'm composting the myth, or how to say this, both the myth of disconnection and also acting out of urgency or fear. So I'm specifically thinking about how because I moving is a time of high isolation. You're doing something very independent. You're letting go of relationships that you've nurtured at a physical place. You're going somewhere new, and a lot of your relationships are just going to be new. So being in that newness, sometimes I have I get a wave of loneliness, and then I'm like, okay, I got to leave my house. But my new thing I'm trying to step into is to feel the feelings, take a breath,
yeah,
and then just go about my day to not be ruled by anxiety or fear of loneliness.
So it sounds like you're stepping into that discomfort. You're being with the discomfort a little more than you were before. You want to.
I'm being with the discomfort, and I'm reminding myself that I am connected to people. Mm-hmm. I do have people that love me. I am having fun. I'm not alone and isolated. And most importantly, when I feel that loneliness, I'm able to connect to myself. Mm-hmm. I can take a pause. I can take a moment. And I think because sometimes we just want to connect, but the connecting to self and feeling presence with self is just as, to me, it can be just as satisfying as healing as going out with a group of people. I actually think when I don't connect to myself, that feeling of loneliness persists. Even if I go to a party or a park or something, even if I'm around people, I can still feel that feeling of isolation.
And I also feel like connecting to oneself is a way of connecting to the earth, because we are earthly beings. So it is so grounding to do that and to witness. It's like we're being a witness to ourselves. Would you do you resonate with that?
I do. And I also just want to add that while I'm composting the myth of loneliness or disconnection, I really agree with what you're saying. both that I'm a part of the earth and that also like being alone outside and like connecting with nature, like those are all ways I can deal with that feeling that's less escapist. And I also wanted to name that I think that while I feel there's a myth of disconnection, I also want to validate like it's okay to feel lonely. You know, it's okay to sit with those feelings. I'm not composting loneliness. Sure. I'm just composting the idea, like the ideas or beliefs that the loneliness brings about, which is that like I'm alone, nobody loves me, I have no close connections. Like those are just self-sabotaging thoughts that aren't really true.
Yeah, like it's like composting the stories that come along with it.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, speaking of stories, I am really excited about your story today.
Yes, I'm going to share today about a queer wedding. And before I get into it, which is, you know, why we're in our wedding fits today with our wedding dates. I wanted to ask if you've ever been to a queer wedding.
Have I ever been to a queer wedding? I actually don't think I have.
You definitely haven't because you would remember.
Yeah, I would remember it. Exactly.
What I love about queer weddings are that like, and what I love about queer people that I noticed when I was younger. I'm going to start with an example of relationships. And I hope that nobody hears this as straight slander. It's not. But we have to celebrate queerness.
Yes, definitely.
You know, in queer relationships, especially when I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of models of those on TV, right? Like maybe the closest thing was Will and Grace. And it's like, that's not really an example. You know, I know the L Word, Queer as Folk, like those are maybe some media that was out there that I had to search for. But what I appreciate about queer relationships is that when people are really embodying their gender in non-binary ways, people are really committed to authentically being who they are, suddenly the scripts and roles that are handed to us by society don't always fit. And there are some queer cultural roles, but for the most part, we're really out here writing our own stories. And it's a deeper level of exploration and authenticity. I bring that up because queer weddings, you're already doing something taboo. You're queer people getting married. So there's a lot of freedom to let that ceremony of love be whatever it needs to be. And the way that people are able to choose traditional elements and weave them together. And then the quality of community that shows up at a queer wedding. Again, this is not straight people slander, but just to say that like, oftentimes if there is biological family present, it's likely family that has gone through some sort of spiritual evolution or is like very purposely open-hearted. It's just a very accepting, affirming space. And that's why queer weddings are some of my favorite. And I'm glad to share that just to set the scene before I really go into the story.
Yeah, definitely. I love it.
I know. I can't wait to invite you to my queer wedding one day.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked me that because I hadn't realized that I haven't been to a queer wedding. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, because you've probably been to a lot of straight weddings, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I love weddings. Actually, one of my earliest memories was that one of my cousins was getting married and they wanted silk roses. So like not fresh roses, but my mom made like 1,000 silk roses and I helped her. I was like 5 years old and I just remember she like we would wrap the silk and then use florist tape and then we would stick them into a styrofoam cone. We made hundreds. I haven't double checked this with my mom. Maybe we only made like 200, but it was very formative. And I was a flower girl at this wedding. This is my root. This is the root of the puffy dress. Being the flower girl at this wedding, I was really living. So I was so excited. I was like, yes, I will be pretty. I will carry around flowers and throw them. So ready. It was an Indian wedding. A lot of my cousins had these very ostentatious, like, Christian wedding in the morning, Indian wedding at night deals, you know, because my family, I don't know if all Indians do this, if this is a Hindu thing, if it's a Punjabi thing, but the whole tradition of the groom riding a white horse with a little child with him, and then his whole family dances in front of him to the bride's house. My family takes that seriously, okay? I've had cousins shut down downtown Chattanooga so that we could ride a horse around the hotel. This is like something I did my whole life through my adolescence. So I've just always loved weddings as a space to connect, to party, to dance. Obviously, I'm a Leo rising, to get dressed up, eat good food. They're always so much fun to me. If you had told me when I was a little kid that I wouldn't go to my cousins' weddings, I wouldn't go to my brother's, like the cousins I grew up with, like my age mate cousins, that I would miss those weddings, that I would miss my brother's wedding, I would have been like, you're lying. I've been practicing my speech. Like, what are you talking about? But the way things came to pass in my life is actually that when my brother, who he met his girlfriend in college, they'd been dating forever. My brother used to always say, let's date for 10 years before we get married. Ha, ha, ha. But eventually his girlfriend was like, you either need to get married to me or we're breaking up. So he got it together and they decided to get married in 2015, I'm realizing, December 2015. And I was in California in grad school during that time. I was prepared to go to their wedding, but during that time, I was actually also transitioning. And so I was in a different place than I am now. Now I'm very femme, like very in my femme identity. And I'm like, oh, and I have a beard. It's just life. At that time, I had lived most of my life. I started growing my beard really when I was 12 years old. From the age of 12 onward, I have never passed as a gender. And I think that the psychological and emotional toll that takes is significant. I think I'm pretty conscious that like there's a level of hypervigilance I experience. There's a level of lack of safety I experience that the people around me do not experience, because if you can pass as a single gender, your life is easier. And I definitely think like, you know, we're recording this the day before the elections. And I think that while I have a lot of complex feelings about voting was important for me because I live in Atlanta. And last time I was in the airport, I actually got harassed. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the way that I was harassed, the things this woman was saying to me, I was like, wow, these are some very transphobic talking points I've never heard. But, you know, for listeners that don't know me, I really navigate this world with quite a full beard. And I'm always wearing dresses. So in terms of like what bathroom to use, it's always confusing to me. It's like I'm in a dress. I'm dressed very femme. I don't necessarily want to go to the men's bathroom. Also, men's bathrooms are like almost always more gross. So I like using the women's bathroom. But anyways, all this to say, let me just bring it back. At that time in my life, I said, what if I just made this easier? What if I just passed as a man? And the reason I went there instead of like, why don't I engage in hair removal surgery, is that in high school for 2 years, I did electrolysis to try and get rid of my beard. And it really did nothing. And it was so painful. And after that experience, I kind of made a vow that I would never put myself through physical pain again to get rid of my beard. So I understand that like, there may have been errors with the woman who did the procedure. You know, no hate to my mom. She was just trying to support me. But she ultimately, because of the high cost of hair removal procedures, she elected to go with a woman who was unlicensed and working out of her own home. And so I don't know if she did it incorrectly. I don't know why the hair removal didn't work, but essentially I went through 2 years of very painful hair removal procedures that didn't work. So I was like, okay, I have to accept that I have a beard. So I was like, well, what if I just try being a man just for pretend? And I actually went on hormones and I like dressed as a man. And that was the era in my life I was in when my brother was getting married. And I was talking to my parents and my family, and I was feeling really frustrated because my family was not being very accepting. I was trying to ask questions about safety. Will I be safe at this wedding? Will you all have my back? And they were just like, what are you talking about? And they refused to acknowledge the safety risk that might come with going to a family event of a different gender. That was all very frustrating to me. And then my mom actually asked me not to attend the wedding because she didn't really know. I know. Let me just take a pause. Let's just take a pause. I know. She asked me not to go to my brother's wedding, I think because her sisters would be there and she didn't know how to deal with it, but she wanted me to visit right after. And I felt extremely frustrated. And even though my sister-in-law called me and was like, you can stay at our house, I think you're going to regret this for the rest of your life. I want you at my wedding. I kind of felt like my mom is so powerful. If my mom does not want me at the wedding, I'm not going to go against her. So I chose not to go to my brother's wedding. And that was what was right for me at the time. And then I actually didn't see my family for 2 years because I was just like, sorry, guys, I can't do it. And so my mom was extremely frustrated. And eventually I did reconnect with my family, actually at a wedding. And everyone was so excited to see me there. And then a little later in life, during that wedding, I did shave my beard. When I turned 30, I returned to my family's home and I decided not to shave my beard because I said, I'm 30. I am old enough where I'm not going to hide who I am from my parents anymore. I just have to stand in who I am. I'm 30. I'm too old, you know? And the truth is, like, there's parts of ourselves we hide. And I've definitely met people. It's not really about age. You know, it's really about you being there in your life. For me, I was like, I'm at a point where I'd rather deal with whatever consequence or rejection than to hide who I am or pretend not to be who I am. That trip back home was really life-changing. And ultimately, my family accepted me. And then I decided after that little visit, testing the waters, being bearded, seeing how everyone did, that trip went well. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll move back to South Carolina, or I'll move back to the Southeast to be close to my family. On my trip from LA, my road trip, moving from LA to South Carolina, I went to my first ever queer wedding.
Oh, wow.
It was an incredible, incredible ceremony. I still remember the mole we ate. It was so good. It was in Taos, New Mexico, in the mountains of New Mexico. And it was a beautiful venue, and the energy of transformative love and acceptance was so powerful, and the reclaiming of cultural traditions and the embracing of family was so powerful. And I spoke with one of the brides, and she told me that the beautiful thing about being queer and choosing to engage your family and your culture is we get to choose what parts we move forward with. And that really hit me because as I reconnected with my family, and in particular my mom, me and my mom have a beautiful relationship. And my mom's actually spoken to me about the spiritual journey she had to go through to accept me as her child. And something that I think was really powerful in that journey that she's told me since is about how one of my mom's friends actually told her, if you do not accept your child will die.
Wow.
And I think that's a very intense statement, but it's kind of true.
Right.
That like when our parents accept us for who we are, parts of us come back to life. And parts of us that like we maybe smother in early adulthood, or like that we stuff down because it's not allowed to grow, or because we have to separate from our parents, that we're put in a position of choosing who we are and having these relationships. Those parts of you do die. It is sad. But once they're given the light of love and acceptance again, they begin to regrow. And, you know, being at my parents' house, or like being back in the Southeast close to my parents again, rebuilding these relationships, I just went through such a beautiful time of growth and love and acceptance with my family. It wasn't always easy. It was definitely awkward a lot of the time. But because I was living in the Southeast again, I was able to actually I would go to my mom's house every week and I would cook a different dish with her. And I brought all these recipes together to make her a cookbook for her 70th birthday. And we were getting closer to her 70th birthday party. Somehow it turned into a big family affair. We had 60 family members coming from all over the nation. People flew in from California. And I knew that my mom expected me to shave my beard or to wax my beard. It was the height of summer. And I just realized I'm so physically uncomfortable. I actually can't do that right now. And I just realized I would rather not go to the party than to do that. And so I talked to my mom, and she both apologized for disinviting me to the wedding all those years ago. And she essentially said, like, you are my family. You have to come. Anyone who doesn't like it can stay home. And it was really sweet. I'm like tearing up.
I know.
It was so sweet. And so that's when I met my whole extended family as who I truly was. And nobody even said anything. Nobody even batted an eye. And I was like, wow, this is really powerful. And my younger self would have never thought that we would have got here. But I think that experience was extremely transformative. And since then, I've been able to have experiences with my family that I never thought were possible. Things like my mom goes to Aldi's and buys the discount Pride merch for me. And things like my dad kind of talking to me about voting and just encouraging me to vote by mail so that I don't, I'm not harassed at the polls, which I know is still kind of depressing, but what I always wanted was for my family to navigate my safety concerns with me and for me to not do that in private. So it was obviously this like larger experience has just been one of love and transformation. I think I've spoken at the start of this about loneliness. And I think as a queer person, I will go hard and say like, I think that loneliness is a key queer experience. We all feel disconnected at times from our networks or tension with our families. And unfortunately, it's a part of things. I know that there's many young queer people who are having different experiences with their family. And there's always been people whose families have just been highly accepting. But for a lot of us, loneliness is something we contend with. And I want to end this story with a final share about the last queer wedding I went to, which was quite recent. It was actually 2 days ago. And I wore this dress. And it was just a beautiful experience because all of these people I had been around in my early 20s during that time when I wasn't going home, and some of these people I have beef with, some of these people I haven't seen in years. Yeah. We all ended up celebrating the love of my two beautiful friends. And it just showed me both the transformative power of queer love to see these people's families accept them and just be moved by their love. But it also really reflected my chosen family back to me. And when I put the photos on Instagram, queer people I met in different states were texting me being like, oh, that's my friend. And I'm like, wow, we really are all family out here. So that's my story of the healing power of a queer wedding.
Oh my gosh, Opulence. You just took us on a journey.
A real journey.
I was just like, every word. That was such a great, like you took us on a journey of family, union, community. And it actually made me realize like how the word unity is in community.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
and like
Nisha.
Weddings, like our unions, like all of this, like together. And also starting with when you were 5, going to that wedding to this most recent queer wedding and, family that's chosen family or biological family. And all of that was like this thread, these different markers on the journey of these different unions of how it sounds like to me that they kind of defined who that family was, who that community was, and also what you wanted in terms of the union of what you wanted in terms of that feeling of togetherness, reflecting back on the loneliness too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do believe that like our rights and like what we fight for needs to be bigger than gay marriage, but like as we talk about weddings, like so much is coming up for me, including like, how much of my life was this legislative fight for gay marriage, how I never thought it would happen in South Carolina. And then it happened really quickly. But weddings are powerful ceremonies. And I'm not cynical. I love ceremonies and the community that comes together for that. I don't think it's an accident. And I think they're very special. And I think that like us celebrating our love for each other, it's needed more than ever in these times. I think that like, actually this couple that got married, I think they intentionally got married because they were like, we need a magic spell for our community of love and unity, of being together, being a part of something. And I think that like that is what I craved for so long in my life because I had to leave my family. I longed to belong to a community. And I think weddings are moments that reinforce that belonging. And as I've aged, I've understood for the people at the center, if someone was at your wedding, it's very meaningful. As I'm talking to you about this, I'm like remembering the wedding I went to in India and how my cousin in India got married. And I told my mom, you can come with me or not, I have to go. Mm-hmm. And my mom was so nervous about me going as a gender fluid person. She was like, it scared her into going because she didn't want me to go alone. But that wedding reconnected me. It was my first time visiting India in 13 years. Yeah. So weddings are these charge points and portals, and they bring us into connection with each other, but also through life-changing moments. I have to say, I did my nails and bought my dress and got a haircut for this wedding and also bought special shoes. Ooh. And now I'm keeping the nails. So I'm forever transformed now that I have acrylics.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. It's really interesting. I am divorced and I don't want to get married again. But I really love what you talked about, the celebration of love. It's like there's like the legal stuff, right? Like we're legally married and what that means and what rights it gives you and yada, yada, yada. But there is that actual kind of going back to that union and that celebration of love that, when we talk about grief and love, I feel like is all encompassing, like you said, when there's this portal that is giving you so much information about your relationships with the people around you, as well as your relationship with yourself, is through the portal of this like union event,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Nisha, I feel like I could talk to you about this forever. And I'm kind of like, do we need a part 2? So maybe,
yeah,
but
we might.
Because when I think of grief and love, it's like, obviously my story is the grief of my family, the grief of missing my brother's wedding, but the love and the fact that it was a true love. Like, I don't know if I had stayed with if I had gone to the wedding, if I'd stayed with my family, like, I don't know if we would have reached the level of authenticity in our relationships that we have now. So it's a lot of both, but weddings are definitely complicated, especially for South Asians. Like my mom had an arranged marriage, so lots of grief and love there. Maybe we'll revisit. But for now, I want to ask, after hearing my story, what are you planting?
I am planting the meaning of union from your story.
Wow.
Yeah. Like what that really means. Because like I said, I have been legally married and legally divorced. And while I don't want to get legally married again, I mean, I do have a partner, a long-term partner. I think that there's the joy of union and defining what that means for ourselves in the context of our relationships that I think is everything. I'm actually reading right now, it's probably right here, a book called Marriage, A History. And it's actually really fascinating about the history of marriage.
Wow.
And most of it is talking about straight marriage because I'm in the Middle Ages now. So they're talking about lots of different things about how marriage was just mostly like for political reasons, financial, economic reasons, and how eventually it's going to get to the part where it's like a love revolution, right? And so this topic really fascinates me. So yeah, so I'm planting the joy of union and also kind of secretly planting another episode to potentially talk more about this topic because I think it's like it's not something that's nice and squeaky clean, right? There's so much in it.
There's so much in it. I definitely kind of forgot about all these things when I was like, oh, I'm going to talk about this. So yes to planting a seed for a future episode. And I think I'm also planning similar but different. Unity within community. And I'm kind of thinking and dreaming up like, what are the different ways we feel unity with each other? One of the things that comes to mind is once I was a part of a dance performance and I choreographed a dance with like 10 other women and we all performed it in sync. And it was a beautiful experience of union and connection and synchronicity. And so, I don't know, I'm really thinking about the unity within community because I'm always like, the word community is so overused. It's like, what does it even mean?
Totally.
But it's like, what are those experiences of unity that really bring us together and make us feel like family?
I love it. Same but different. Beautiful. Thank you, Opulence.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
And great episode.
Wonderful.
All right. Bye, y'all.
See y'all next time.
we decided that for our final episode this season, we would love to have a listener episode, and we want to hear from you.
Yeah, we're going to be doing an episode in line with our theme this season about grief, love, and pets. So some questions that can inspire you are, what are some ways you've grieved a pet that surprised you? Share stories of connecting with your pet after they died. And what have your pets taught you about love? So head to that fan mail text message button in our show notes and let us know.
And if you just want to send us a message letting us know what you thought about the podcast, we would love that too. Thank you.
Bye.
Earthworm Slumber Party is hosted by Opulence Abundance and Nisha Modi, edited and scored by Adrien Garbar, and produced by Dalya Guerin.